and welcome back to the College Bowl Podcast. Today, me and Nick here have the Michigan Wolverines in the lab discussing this quarterback battle as they're in the middle of spring practice. A lot to unsort as J.J. McCarthy ends his successful tenure with a national championship. He heads off to the NFL. This is a new-look Michigan team, Nick. I think they'll certainly compete in 2024, and whoever is going to step into this quarterback role is going to, help them go a long way in deciding what happens in the new-look Big Ten. Sharon Moore steps into this whole coaching role. Kirk Campbell, he's going to be the offensive coordinator. Worked with the quarterbacks a season ago. He's still going to be the quarterback coach in 2024. Only his third year on staff, though. And speaking of J.J. McCarthy, there's obviously varying opinions, controversial ones maybe, even of him as a prospect. But regardless, he looked good in this system. Went 27-1, won 2 Big 12 crowns. Of course, that national championship game. And again, there's a lot of disrespect being thrown his way as a prospect. But regardless, Nick, we said that this would be the player who would elevate them over the hump. And that's exactly what he did. After that Orange Bowl game where Cade McNamara didn't look very good, and they got blasted by Georgia in their first playoff appearance, we said that McCarthy's going to be a guy that elevates them to the next level. And that's exactly what happened. So, obviously, that's a different conversation to have as a prospect. But in terms of what they got from this former 5-star prospect, it was very good.
McCarthy was phenomenal for Michigan at times. He really took them to a next level. They kind of were stuck in the same position that Penn State had kind of been stuck in a while, where they had serviceable quarterbacks in the Big Ten, but were not going to be able to compete against the SEC programs that were stronger, more physical, better defensively. I think, Penn State has that same issue as well. They're hoping Drew Allure this year can really change that for them. J.J. McCarthy did change that for Michigan, right? He got them over the hump. He won them a national championship. 27-1 is a very impressive record. The system certainly suited him well. He looked good in the system, felt comfortable having those 2 power backs behind him and Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards that were able to alleviate some of the pressure on him. McCarthy was able to use his legs as well and be involved in different ways. McCarthy's flying up draft boards, getting a lot of late movement, similar to, Mitch Trubisky's a name I look at, a guy that moved up super late, although I think, McCarthy is better than Trubisky is in terms of raw talent, in terms of the college product as well. And now you move into a new era here where Michigan has a new head coach. Obviously, they kept in-house to keep a lot of the same team together, which is, makes a lot of sense here. Sharon Moore is a very respected coordinator, and he looked great in the games that he was the head coach during Jim Harbaugh's absences due to scandals across the season. Now he steps up here, and he's got a couple of options here at quarterback that we're going to discuss, 4 options to kind of choose from and pick one to mold to be his starter as they welcome new teams into the conference. Tough test this year. They play Texas at one point as well, so it's not going to be an easy year for Michigan in terms of a tough schedule. They're going to have to get somebody in there who's going to be confident and comfortable early on.
Michigan, a power run game. They just needed that above-average quarterback play to give this offense that adequate balance to really throw opponents off guard. And I think the play was, like you said, at times phenomenal from J.J. McCarthy. But at the end of the day, it was still exactly what they needed to accomplish big things, and that's what they did. Looking at these options, Campbell said everyone is number one, and we'll see what comes out on top. And I think that's the best way to kind of describe this. We do have 2 guys I think we're going to pinpoint here as the favorites. Alex Orgy, a 3-star in the class of 2022 out of Texas. His 2 brothers played defense for Vanderbilt, including Anthony, who was a very good linebacker for the Doors. Has only thrown 1 pass in 2 years, a total of 21 carries for 123 yards and 3 scores. He had exactly 2 carries per game over the last 4 games. Those were the 4 biggest games of the year for Michigan. So obviously, they showcased a lot of trust in him by allowing him to do that. One missed carry and fumbles, and those completely changed those games, Nick. So for them to give him that amount of trust, I think is really impressive and shows he has a bit of a leg up, I think, this spring. 6'3", 236, he's a player who has dual threat prowess. He's built like a tank. He's a real unit. They've used him as a downhill runner a good bit, either on the read option or they motion a back out, clearing out that backfield for, a QB draw. Showcases some nice pop in terms of speed and his initial twitch. I think his burst can be really dangerous as well. That's what I kind of noticed on tape. In terms of, what I saw from his high school, it was more so highlights. He showcased a big arm. He could really throttle it downfield, seemed to be on the move quite frequently. The ability to throw on the run stands out. Obviously, he was kind of throwing the guys who were wide open at times when he was throwing it downfield, but he was still just a natural playmaker for them. His touch passing showcased a little velocity, though. Certainly only saw a couple of in-rhythm throws. Accuracy was sporadic, and obviously mechanics are always going to be an issue in high school, especially when you're such a raw playmaker. Screw mechanics, basically, right? We'll worry about that later. Those are the things I saw from Orgy. I think he's going to be the favorite right now. Only 1 pass in 2 years, though, Nick, but I think his ability to run the ball could certainly really benefit this offense, and I'll get to that here in a minute.
He's a very talented player, Alex Orgy. When you look at the size as well, former 3-star. I think he was underrated coming out of high school. A really talented player, right? I like the physical frame, 6'2", 226, a very nice physical frame. I also got the impression from the high school film that the mechanics weren't really there. I think he looked really good in play action. They ran several play action plays that I saw in the highlights that really did work well, where he got quick release and made a quick decision. I also, he's a very strong athlete. I saw one of the clips where he was able to hurdle over a defender on the goal line, score a touchdown, a couple other moves where he spun off and threw defenders while running. So obviously he has a big physical frame, nice footwork in the pocket, took a hits and was able to complete passes as well. So, that physicality is going to help when you have to play those tougher defenses. They're going to get after you and they're going to hit you. So it's good to be able to stand up in the pocket and be a physical background quarterback. Played several seasons in high school football, started at different schools, kind of transferred around a little bit, right? Played at three different schools, got good experience, though, across those schools. Came in here at Michigan, did look good in the limited appearances on the ground, right? The 15 carries in 6 games for 86 yards and 1 score, 5.7 yards per attempt. No real passing attempts for him, but still has 1 rushing touchdown. This is a guy where they do have a lot of options here, in my opinion, right? You can really do a whole lot with him. He saw some solid action. This guy could definitely make sense being the starter early on.
And, a lot of people, when they talk about this Michigan quarterback room, on paper, it's not all that pretty, right? It's not all that great. It's not like a Georgia, a USC, Georgia. They had basically 3 5-stars competing with each other last spring. But one thing I do want to point out, and it's a good point, I think that some people start to pick up on, is Michigan. I think they're happy with this quarterback room because even if they have limitations as passers, right? And I think with the wide receiver room they have, this is certainly a part of their game they're probably going to shy away from at times. I wonder if a Denard Robinson type style could be in play for Michigan. McCarthy was an impressive runner, of course, but this style of player in an already dominant ground game could be flat out daunting. If they have that extra blocker out there, this is a team that could really, control time of possession. They could be one of the tops in the country in doing that. If they have a quarterback like this who's always falling forward with the great offensive line, with Donovan Edwards, I think that's one thing that's kind of being overlooked here, Nick, because the passing attack, it seems like they're going to have a bit of a ceiling, right? But I think this could really play into their favor, and this is not something opponents want to see. Michigan running the football more, don't sign me up for that one bit.
I think this, like what Denard Robinson was able to do at Michigan is very comparable to what Alex Orgy could do potentially, right? He was a dynamic quarterback. When you look at the film on him in the past, everyone remembers what he was able to do in those seasons at Michigan where he was super dynamic on his feet, was a serviceable passer as well. I think Orgy could be at that level where he's a very serviceable passer and a great athlete on the ground. You can have that sort of dual threat potential with Edwards in the backfield. So I think it's certainly possible you can kind of try and figure that out. I think that would be a very successful game plan to put together if you're the Michigan Wolverines.
Also in that class of 2022, his top competition, we figure Jaden Dingle from California, 3-star as well, 6'5", 235 last year was his billing. More of a pro-style option under center, though. 4 or 5 for 50 yards and a touchdown late and mop-up duty and a few blowouts were his numbers. A real slow, choppy release. He's worked on it a good bit. Certainly still needs to speed it up. His feet also need to get a little bit quicker. Mental processing is going to be something that's, going to be uncovered. Campbell said he's happy with Dingle's accuracy and football IQ, though, and his progression is certainly something that's impressing this coaching staff. Will it be enough, though, to replace maybe Orgy getting inserted into the lineup, a guy who, again, got plenty of big game, well, I wouldn't say plenty, but, a solid amount of big game experience last year to showcase that trust. And if what I just alluded to with that running style with the quarterback at the helm, that's not going to be something that really helps Dingle because he's not as much of an athlete as Orgy is, and I certainly think that gives him a leg down if that's, of course, what they want to go with this season.
Dingle, more of a pro-style quarterback out of California, 6'4", definitely hangs in the pocket. Good pocket presence though, right? In the high school film I watched, he was able to avoid hits in the pocket, looked comfortable in the pocket. Definitely has the solid footwork, takes those nice steps, can read over the middle. Going to be more of your pocket passer type quarterback, right? With that pro-style setup there. I don't know if that's entirely favorable to Michigan. I think, like you said, like you were alluding to, you kind of want a different sort of dynamic quarterback in this system if you're going to be operating here with Michigan this year. I just don't know if he's exactly what they're looking for. And Dingle, I think it's a good height there at 6'4", 3-star, coming out of California, limited appearances, really only in garbage time. So we don't really have a whole lot to work with for him right now. I think this is a guy that has high potential, right? Really solid, the number 19 in that class in 2022. So obviously ranks 30 spots higher than Orgy did. So that's certainly something to look at. I think he's a very solid player. He might have bulked up a little bit well, which certainly could help him, but he is a true pro-style quarterback. If Michigan wants to make that sort of transition, he's the guy to do it.
The one thing Jim Harbaugh had said about Dingle is he's a good athlete with some good stature. Made some plays as a runner, but certainly only in situations where he needed to really desperately make a play. He has that size and sturdiness to be able to break tackles and shed when being roughed up in the pocket. I think it was Campbell who gave him, a bit of a Big Ben comparison. Obviously, a guy who didn't really move very often, but bringing him down in the pocket was hard to do, Nick. I mean, he was good at just shedding guys, pass rushers coming after him. And that's certainly something that's going to be noted here in the Big Ten, is having that ability to stand tall in the pocket and make plays like that. So that's certainly something that could be beneficial for him. Looking at some other guys in this race, Jaden Davis, 114th ranked recruit in this incoming class, 9th ranked quarterback out of Charlotte, North Carolina, 6'3", 200. Does not bring a lot of size to the table or a big arm, but he really thrives with those intangibles that are, good in being a nice starter at the collegiate level. A good short to intermediate thrower, works very well as a quick decision maker on those 3-step drops, some good mental makeup, nice football IQ. He's not pegged as a true dual threat, but more so of a, having enough athletic ability to win in space. You see a lot of that nowadays in today's football. True freshman, he's going to be in the race. Obviously, said everyone's number one. You can come in there and impress. Likely not going to happen right, Nick, but like we said on paper, the QB room is not all that deep. This young man certainly has an opportunity to impress.
He certainly has a chance to do so, right? In a wide open quarterback room, you're going to get every opportunity to make your mark and stand out. I would not expect them to start a true freshman day one, but it's certainly possible, right? This is a guy that's a little bit smaller than the first two quarterbacks we talked about, a 4-star coming out of high school. A good gamer, high football IQ, right? Doesn't have that elite size or elite arm, but he's a guy who's very accurate, very solid as well. Good footwork for him. I think he's got nice potential there. He was a highly ranked recruit out of high school, so there certainly is the backing in that regard. So that could certainly work out for him. This is a guy that I think can mold into a star quarterback for Michigan. I just think right now it is way too early for him to be kind of thrown to the fray. I just don't think it would work out very well if you put him in there early on.
He also seems like a pretty optimal fit for this offense, though. Like, we don't need you to throw it 50 yards downfield and make plays. Like, if this running game is going to be strong, play action, quick slants, I mean, the intangibles he has could certainly benefit them significantly, Nick. On play action, what are you looking for? Intermediate range, finding the guys who are open. So I think these things here is exactly why they recruited this young man. He could certainly be a very formidable starter, I'd think. So it's not a bad recruitment at all, I think, for Michigan. This is a pretty good fit for them. And that's one thing I'm kind of sensing with these guys they have is they don't blow you away in terms of, stars or anything like that, right? But it seems like they're optimal fits for what they want to do. And if they have to be versatile, they can also do that. Another guy here, Jack Tuttle, plenty of experience, has been around the block a bit. He arrived at Michigan last year after 4 seasons at Indiana, signed with Utah in January 2018. Kind of reminds me of when they brought in Alan Bowman a few years back, a multi-year vet to get hold up in case of emergency. Bowman obviously is a lot better than Tuttle. He was pretty good this past season for Oklahoma State. Tuttle, he's in the fold to be the starter. I think there's some major issues going on if that is going to be the case with him, a guy that never impressed at Indiana. Significant amount of experience, though, Nick, and I think it was kind of obvious that he was the backup quarterback last year. Sorry, Michigan fans, if that's wrong. I did not check on that. I'm just assuming he was. He did have the second most passing attempts for this football team. That's really my verdict on him, Nick, because if he's in the fold to be your starter, you got some issues going on.
I think Tuttle has a great opportunity to be the starter. I'm going to make the case here. You can say what you want. 6'4", 212. This is a guy that's been around, same recruiting class out of high school as Trevor Lawrence. So obviously that is something when you look at it, it's eye-opening, right? He's been around forever, was a true freshman in 2019. So certainly, an eye-opening stat, right? But this is a guy that's got, 7 years of experience, someone that's been around college football, a veteran. Played in 6 games last year, so I think that he had decent experience there, right? 130 yards and a touchdown in garbage times of 15 of 17 in those short appearances. Had some passing experience at Indiana, played in 7 games in 2021 with a 51% comp rate, 423 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 picks. So obviously that is not a great stat when you look at it like that. But this is a guy that has veteran presence and could be a leader here. If you're Michigan where you're trying to find someone to bridge the gap, this could be a good way to go. If you really don't think Orgy or Dingle are ready to start immediately, this is a guy that could bridge the gap early on, maybe get pulled halfway through the season, or just be a guy to bridge the gap, and then you go out and blitz and get your quarterback next offseason in the transfer portal. I think Tuttle does have high upside. It certainly would be a move that would maybe scratch some eye, or be an eye-opening move, get some people as a head scratcher. But I think it does make a lot of sense for Michigan.
Yeah, that's not a bad selling point by any means. I just don't think he's that very good of a player. Tuttle, though, 199 career passing attempts, was a former teammate of Michael Penix. So in terms of experience and being in the locker room and being one of the older guys in the room, it's highly beneficial for them more than likely, because some of the other guys they have on roster at quarterback, not all that great in terms of that experience. Davis Warren, a guy we should mention, he's been around a couple of years as well. He's a veteran. I don't think he's really seen the field at all. I do think he impressed last year in the spring game, though. I do remember hearing rumblings of that. So we got about 5 guys that are looking for the nod. Looking at that final verdict, Nick, we're going to go ahead and pick who we think will be the starter. For me, though, the QB room seems subpar, but they have the guys they want, I think, in terms of fit for the system, in terms of that versatility of what they want to run. They want to throw the ball a little bit more. Dingle seems fit for that. Orgy, he's going to be the guy you want to run with. If you want a guy who gives you a little bit of everything, and again, those intangibles, the freshman Davis gets in there, and Tuttle brings the experience. So I think they have a nice variety here, Nick. Orgy could really give this run game an even larger leg up. I think the passing attack upside seems incredibly limited either way you go. And I think that's what they're going to probably run with this year, Nick. They're going to look to dominate clock. This defense is still going to be largely intact, and they're still going to be pretty dominant, I would say. And I think, if they can add a couple more minutes per drive to their possession log, I mean, that's going to be highly impressive. I think Orgy's really going to help wear these opponents down. I could be completely wrong, right? But I definitely think that seems like they might be going that, opting for plenty of QB run. This is going to be very tough for opponents to stop, and I think it'd be awesome if that's what they opted to go with, a team that only throws the ball about 20-25 times a game. They live in short yardage with this physical specimen. Orgy is going to be the starter for me. You're going to go with the veteran Jack Tuttle, though, a guy, again, I don't think is very good, but your selling point does make a little bit of sense.
This is a gamble I'm going to take, right? I'm going to roll the dice. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I feel like this could be a realistic opportunity here for Michigan, right? You look at Michigan, this is a team that they want to try and retain as much normalcy as possible as they try to bridge the gap to the future under Sherrone Moore, right? Jim Harbaugh bolts late in the cycle. You didn't want to lose a lot of people. You retain Moore. I think that made a lot of sense. I think he was a good hire, but you want to keep things intact. So plug in a veteran in Tuttle that has experience running a Big Ten offense at a different program, been around the game, a guy who's a leader, has experience in the locker room. If it doesn't work out, you pull the trigger and switch to Orgy. I think there's no reason why you can't do that in the middle of the season. I think you start with Tuttle and see what you get out of him. I think Tuttle has opportunity to be a good, plug and play quarterback. You put him in there and see, yes, he wasn't impressive at Indiana, right? There are some red flags. He's very old, bounced around a couple different programs, but obviously Michigan saw something in him when they recruited him and brought him in out of the transfer portal. So I think he has upside, and this is a nice guy to bridge the gap. You go out and get a star quarterback next year, or if Davis is ready by next year, then you plug him in at that point, or Orgy next year. So I think this is someone that gives them a lot of flexibility and options, someone that's going to be able to stand in there and get the job done.
That's going to be it for today's episode, Nick. I appreciate you joining me as always. And, we're going to find out real quick. They played Texas, I think it's week 2. So it's going to be very interesting. I think it'd be, again, really fun if Orgy runs, a QB run type system. It's going to be exciting either way, though. On paper, again, it's not all that great for Michigan. If you're just a casual, you'll probably think they're just going to fall off a cliff at quarterback. I don't exactly think that is going to be the case this year. I think it's going to be tough for them to, have the same expectations they had with J.J. McCarthy. But I think in terms of the offense completely just being imploded, I don't think it's going to happen one bit. But we'll see, though, Nick. We're going to find out very early in the season. I think it's interesting to see how much versatility they have and how they plan to use it.
Certainly, they're going to be tested early on against Texas and other tough teams on their schedule. It's going to be a trial by fire thing. Whichever one of these quarterbacks gets in there, they're going to learn very quickly and have to kind of figure it out. I think Michigan can sort this out throughout the season. There are 4 good options here, in my opinion.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.